Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to create this lovely floor cushion that's designed to go into a child's bedroom. Now I spend quite a lot of time sat on the floor playing with my daughter or reading stories to her, and I thought it would be nice to create something a bit more comfortable that was really attractive to go in her room. So this I think would make a great gift for a birthday or for Christmas, with Christmas coming up. So we're going to work through how to construct this cushion. When we make it, we're going to use a number of the fabulous Bernina accessories. The main one we're going to use is the circular sewing attachment. I love this attachment, it's brilliant. And we're going to use that to create these circles. And we're also going to use our Tailor-tack Foot. Now this is a really great foot that it's a bit underused, I think. And we're going to use that to create some fringing, which is going to go on the back. So it's not only nice on the front, it's nice on the back, and we're going to use that foot to create this lovely fringing. So we're going to use a few accessories and learn some new techniques, and I hope it's going to be really fun. Great, okay, so the first thing I did was I got a pillow, so I knew what size to work with, so I just ordered this online. It's a nice big pillow, so it's going to be nice and comfortable to sit on. So I've got my shape and I know how big everything's got to be. And this cushion is 24 inches wide, so that's my starting point. Then what I did was I drew out a to scale plan of what I was going to do, just so I could work out all the proportions. I decided on a font that I was going to use, and this is for my daughter, so her initials are RB. But you could customise that for whoever you're making it for. And then I just chose some nice simple shapes to incorporate. But you know, you can make them as complicated or as easy as you want. It just depends, you know, what you want to feature on your cushion. It's quite nice if you wanted something a bit more complicated. You can sometimes use colouring books as you know, a base for your design, because they're nice and simple shapes that you can cut out in applique. But I've just gone for a star and a heart, and it may not end up in exactly this position. We'll see how we get on. So once I designed my cushion and got it all my sizes worked out, the next thing I did was to sort out my fabric. So these are my fabrics that I've chosen. Now obviously I've gone super bright, because that's going to work well in the setting it's going to go in. But you could tone it down, use a lot more florals, you could make it more Christmassy, or you know, choose a few more novelty fabrics if you want, whatever you want. But I've just gone for something nice and bright. And I've chosen some patterned fabric for my initials. I really like this fabric because A, it's really cute, but also the colours within it I think work well with my outer colours that I've chosen. So the initials are going to be in this nice patterned fabric. So I cut out all my the parts I was going to applique, and I've just put some Bonder web on the back of them because I'm going to iron them down before I applique around them. So I think I've got all my sections ready. So now we need to start off by appliquing the circles onto the backing fabric, and I'm going to do that using our circular sewing attachment. So we're going to move on to that now. So the next stage, we're going to sew our circles with our circular embroidery attachment. Today I'm working with the lovely 480, which is one of the latest machines in the Bernina range. And I'm all threaded up, ready to go. I've got a green Metla poly sheen thread on the top and just a normal polyester white on the bottom, which I'm going to keep on throughout the project. And so I'm all threaded up. I love this machine because it's got these extra large bobbins which hold 70% more thread than a normal bobbin. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to have to change my bobbin throughout the whole process of making this cushion. Okay, so I've prepared my fabric. And when you're using the circular sewing attachment, it's really good idea to have your fabric stabilised. It just keeps everything smooth and even. So I've got some stabiliser on the back, and I've just used a tiny bit of 505 spray to stick my top fabric onto my base fabric. So the next thing I'm going to do is attach the circular sewing attachment. Now this is great. You can do circles from 1.5 inch up to 10, and I think it's 10 inches. I want to go around, I think it's 8.25 inches is what I'm going to set up for my circles. So we're going to move on and I'll show you how to put the attachment on. In the box we get our instructions to tell us how to use it. we get the attachment itself. So this is the attachment. We get a screwdriver and we get 2 screws, but we actually only need 1 to attach it, so 1's a spare. So I'm just going to take the screws out and I'm going to pop it on. So the way it works is we have this prong here, and this goes through the center of your circle, and it allows the fabric to pivot so you get perfect circles when you stitch out. The great thing about this is you can have it so you stitch clockwise, or you can have it round the back so you stitch anti-clockwise. But for today, because we're going to be doing we're going to be using the decorative stitches, we want it to stitch out clockwise, so I'm going to attach it at the front. So it just fits into place here. There's a little hole here where you screw it into, and I just pop my screw in there, and with the little screwdriver I just attach that. So I'm just going to screw that into place. So this just holds it down, and all new Berninas, well, all Berninas have this hole so you can attach this. So I'm just going to make sure I line it up and screw it down into place. So that's it lined up. I'm going to put that back on because I'm always hurting myself with it. Okay, so now we're ready to go. The next thing we need to do is we need to work out how big a circle we want to create. And I'm going to just get my tape measure, and I'm going to work that out. So I think I want, I think it was 4 1/4 inches is what I want. So I'm just going to line this up with the needle in a central needle position, and this moves backwards and forwards, so that's how I work out how big my circle's going to be. So I'm just going to check that that's in the right spot. Yep, that looks good to me. Now I'm just going to, because I'm just appliquing the top fabric to the bottom, I just need to use a straight stitch for this. And so I'm going to pop the fabric underneath the foot, so I can take the little protective stopper off. And as I say, I've marked the centre of my fabric, and that centre needs to go here, which is the pivot point. So I'm just going to slide this under and pop this down. So I can sort of feel where it's coming through, so that feels good. So I'm going to pop that pin so right the way through. And at this point I'm just going to give it a little spin because we want it to rotate. We don't want it to get stuck, so it's good just to make sure that it is going to spin. Then I can attach my little stopper so I don't hurt myself and it keeps everything into place. And then I'm ready to start sewing. I found the best way to sew particularly large circles is to set my speed at as slow as it will go, and to use my start-stop button and not my foot, because I found that allows me to focus on keeping the fabric nice and smooth, and just to make sure everything is pivoting well, because when you do your circle, your 2 ends have got to meet, so it's really important that everything lines up. So I'm going to lower my foot, and I've got a straight stitch selected. I've got my speed as slow as it will go, and I'm just going to turn on, and I'm going to do a few stitches back just to secure, and then we're going to sew round. Now I found the best way to do it is slow and steady, and just to smooth out as you go round. Make sure you've got no wrinkles and everything's nice and flat and lining up, and then when you reach the end of your circle, then both lines of stitching should marry up. So we're just going to go and stitch our way round. Now if you're working on smaller circles, then you can go a bit faster, but for this large circle, which is 8.5 inches, I've found that this is just the best way. You just have to be patient, then everything will line up and it will be nice and neat. So we're approaching the start, and it's all looking good. It looks like it's going to line up. And there we go, we've lined up. So now we can go back a few stitches and then we can stop. And another thing I really love about this machine is it's got scissors. So I can just press my scissors, and I think this is actually set to knot and then cut, so I probably didn't need to go back. But it just keeps everything so nice and neat, and I'm really happy that those lines have joined up. So we're just going to knot, cut, everything's nice and secure, and my 2 lines have joined up. So now I'm going to cut the excess fabric off, and I'm going to repeat the process on the other 3 squares that I've got to do. So now I've appliqued around all 4 of my squares, and I've cut the excess fabric away, so we've got our dots in the middle. And the next stage is to use the circular sewing attachment to sew down a really pretty decorative stitch around the edge, just to finish off these circles. Now, the thing I love about this machine, and all the Berninas really, is they have a great range of decorative stitches. They have so many lovely options. It's actually really hard to choose what's the best one. But if I go into my decorative folder, and for this first one, I'm going to look in the satin stitch designs, and I can actually pop that screen open so I can see all my options. As you can see, there's loads of really nice ones, but I think I've settled on, for this first square, I'm going to use 426, which is a half moon shape, this little half moon shape here. Now I've played around with it a bit earlier, and I've changed the default settings slightly, and I've also moved the needle position over to the right because I want this design to cover up the straight stitch line that I've already sewn. So I've selected this stitch and we're ready to go. So the next stage is to put my fabric back onto my circular sewing attachment. One of the things I love about this attachment is, you know, I've sewn my circle down, taken it off the machine. Now I can put it back on the machine and I can get it in exactly the right spot to applique over the edge. And I do that by, I've got my little hole here where the pin came through, and I just have to make sure that I pop that back right in the same position. So I just need to look underneath and place it exactly where it was before. Just pop that back. And now, because the attachment hasn't moved, nothing has changed, I know it's going to stitch over that perfectly. So I'm going to put my little stopper back on so I don't stab myself again. And then I can start to sew. Now I'm just going to pop my foot down, and I'm going to select to start off with a knot, because this machine has a knot function, so it's going to secure at the beginning. And again, I'm going to use my start stop button. I'm going to go a little bit faster this time, and I'm going to stitch all the way around with this lovely half moon design. Now the tricky bit is when you get to the end. So when I get near to the end, so the 2 rows of stitching are going to join up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop hopefully 2 pattern repeats away from the end, and I'm going to assess how much space I've got and whether I need to make any adjustments to the length of the pattern. But we're just going to start off by sewing round. So I'm just going to hold my thread, press and hold, and away we go. Okay, so we're approaching the end. When I get, I'm going to press pattern end. I think I'm just going to do 1 more, and I can tell where I am on the screen. Then I'm going to press pattern end. So we're going to stop after this one. And we're just going to assess how many we think we're going to be able to fit in this gap. So I'm just going to have a little look. So I think that's sort of about a finger. So I don't think I'm going to get 2 in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them slightly smaller. So hopefully I will be able to get 2 in. I've moved on to my next square, and I'm going to go back in and select another pattern. For this one, I'm going to use, on the 480, it's stitch number 422, so I'm going to select that. I've changed my thread to a nice contrasting pink, and I've also changed my foot to foot 20C, so this is open-toed, so I can really see where my stitches are going. Underneath, it's got a nice wide groove, and that's really good for my satin stitches, because this is obviously has a bit of a satin stitch element to it. So we're going to work our way around and see how we get on. Now for this one, when I sewed the circle, I moved my needle position over 2 marks to the left. So hopefully when I come to do my triangles, I won't have such overlap because they can be slightly more to the right. So I hope that makes sense. And now we're going to go round with my little triangles all the way around. I've made them a little bit smaller and a bit denser so you get a nicer effect as we go around. So I've just made a few changes to the default setting. Okay, so we're getting towards the end, and I'm going to stitch until I think I've got about room for 2. So I'm going to do one more after this. And I'm just going to assess. I think I've just got about room for another 2. So I'm going to carry on and I'm going to do another 2. And we can then join up. So that's 1. And then I just want to do one more, so I'm going to press pattern end. And they've matched up beautifully, so I'm really pleased with that. So I can just use my scissors to knot and trim. And then there, I don't think you'll be able to see the join at all in that, so that's worked out really well. And I think using a slightly smaller design certainly helps if you're trying to join them up at the end. So that's that one done, and we're going to move on to the next one. For our last circle, I've chosen a little heart design, which I think is going to look really pretty going around the edge, and I've changed my thread to some contrasting green. I've reduced the density down a little bit, so it's a bit more dense. I didn't want it quite as open as the default setting. So away we go. Okay, so we're getting close, so I'm going to do one more, see where that lands me. And I don't think that's going to be too bad, so we'll do one more and see how that joins up. I think that's going to work. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Just going to do one more stitch, they join, and that's a perfect match. Very pleased with that. And I'm going to knot and cut with my scissors. The next section we're going to work on appliquing our shapes down. Now what I've done is I've peeled the bonder web off the back and I've ironed them onto the centre of my circle. So I've prepared all 4 blocks, and now we're going to move on to appliquing each of the different designs down, and I'm going to do that with 4 slightly different techniques. So we're going to look at 4 different ways of appliquing down our shapes. I really love applique. It's really fast and efficient, and it looks great. So I think it's gonna look really nice. So for the first one, for the star, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a running stitch all the way around the edge, just to hold that down. I'm going to use foot 20, and I'm going to use a straight stitch, but I'm just going to take that straight stitch down. I'm just going to make it a tiny bit shorter. We're going to go to 2.25, come out of that. And I'm going to use the edge of the foot as a guide. So because of that, I need to move my needle position. So I'm going to move my needle position over to 0.4. Then I'm going to start midway down one of the star's prongs, and I'm just going to lower my foot down. Now, when you're doing applique, your best friend is definitely your knee lift. The combination of knee lift and needle down helps you to be really, really precise, and it really gives you a great level of control because you can keep your hands on your work and you can just raise and lower using your knee lift as you need to turn and pivot. If you've got hovers on your machine, that's another great option, but for today on this model I'm going to use my knee lift, which I really love. So we're going to start sewing down and around. Now I'm going to bring my threads to the top of my work because I'm going to tie them off at the end so I get a really nice neat join. So to bring my threads up, I'm going to go needle down, needle up, then I'm going to bring my foot up and I'm just going to bring both my threads to the top. I'm going to use my tweezers here just to pull that through. So I've got both threads on the top and I can lower that down, just get that nice and precise, and away we go. We're just going to line up, that's it, one last stitch, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave slightly longer tail because I'm going to pull those threads to the back and just knot them off so I get a nice neat finish. So that's our first shape applique down, the star done, and I think it looks really smart, so we're going to move on to the next one. So now we're going to move on to doing our R, and I want to do this with a satin stitch all the way around the edge. So I'm going to set my satin stitch up first. So what I've done is I've just got a little sample to practice on, and I've chosen the same colours because then I can work out, you know, how dense the stitch needs to be, so I can not see any of the colours of the fabric coming through. So to set up my satin stitch, I'm going to select a zigzag, and I'm going to alter the width and the length. So in terms of width, I would like it to be, I'm going to go for 3 mil width, and in terms of length, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off at 0.3. I'm going to see how that looks, and then if I have to take it down to 0.25 I will, but I just want to do a little test to see. Now also what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my needle position, so I'm going to move it right over because again I want to use the edge of the foot as a guide. So using my wonderful knee lift, I'm just going to stitch down and just see how that looks. Now it looks fine, but I think it could be a bit closer together. It's a little bit gappy for what I want. So again I'm going to go and I'm just going to take my stitch length down to 0.25 now, and I'm going to see how that looks. I don't want it too dense, but I don't want it too gappy either, so I'm just going to do a little sample. And yeah, that looks better. It's much closer than the earlier attempt, so I think that's going to work well. So we're going to start off using that. So now we're going to start sewing around our letter R. I'm just going to select to do a knot to start, just to secure my ends, and then we'll just work our way down. So I'm just lining up the edge of the foot with the edge of my fabric, making sure I'm covering the edge of my fabric, and then I'm just going to slowly work my way round. So if it's a slight curve, I can just gently guide my fabric round, but as we get into a more severe curve, I'm going to have to use my knee lift. So I want to stop with my needle on the outside, use my knee lift, just pivot round so I'm lined up again, and then carry on. And I'm just going to work my way around this outer curve. So with outer curves you stop on the outside. Right, so we're coming up to a slightly trickier section, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch down and I'm going to stitch into my fabric for 3 mil, so then I can pivot and come back down. So I'm going to go a little bit further in, stop on the outside, I'm going to twist, and then I'm going to come down and then I'm going to stop on the inside and just twist round a little bit more, so I'm following that shape, and now I'm lined up to go around the leg of the R. And now I'm back to stopping on the outside and pivoting round. Now we're approaching an inside curve, so I need to stop on the inside to pivot round. So I get a nice, don't get any gapping. And then again, I'm going to go 3 mil over, stop on the outside and twist, and then I should better come straight down. And I'm going to overlap just ever so slightly and then use my scissors with the knot program just to tie off. Just going to overlap just slightly, stop on the outside, press my scissors, it's going to secure and knot. And there we go. So that's the outside of the R done, and now we just need to move on and do the inside. So we'll just carry on and do that. Now we're on to our B, and I'm going to use a blanket stitch to applique this down, and that's one of my favourite stitches to use with applique. I think it looks really nice. So I'm going to go into my quilting. I was in my decorative, but now I'm going to go into my quilting stitches, and there's such a lovely range. There's so many different options that I could have chosen, but I'm going to go for 1309, which is a standard blanket stitch. Now the default setting is 2.3, but I'd like to take that up to 3 because I want it to be, you know, the same width as the satin stitch I've just done, so they all, you know, marry up nicely. So I'm just going to take that up to 3, and I can come out of that. And again, I want to use the edge of the foot as a guide, so I'm going to move my needle position as far over as I can, and I'm going to applique down. Now I'm going to bring my threads to the top again, and then I can tie off. So I'm just going to line up. So again, I'm going to go needle down, needle up, and then just pull my threads to the top. Grab that with my tweezers. And I'm starting on a nice long straight bit, so it's easier to join when I get all the way round. And I'm just going to use my knee lift like I did before. So away we go. So again, I want to stop on the outside, just pivot round. Now I think I can do about 3 blanket stitches, and then I have to stop and move. I think that for this shape that seems to work well. So if I do 3, they stay in line, but then I have to pivot. Because I really want this to sit nicely on the edge. Now we're getting to a little corner here, so I'm going to do 1 more, and then I can do 1 more. Now here I'm going to stop, and I'm going to reselect the stitch, and I'm going to pivot, and I'm hoping it's going to do 1 stitch to the side, and then I'm going to stop again, reselect the stitch. So I'm going back to the beginning of the stitch, and I'm going to twist round, and it's going to go to the side again. And now it's going to carry on going forwards, and that way I get a nice neat corner. So we've turned the corner, and now we're just going to go down, and I'm going to stop there. It joins up nicely, and I'm going to leave my fairly long tails because I'm going to, I'll just pull that through to the back and neaten that up. So now we need to do the inside of our bees. So that's my bee done. For the last section, which is going to be the heart, I'm going to use a decorative stitch to applique it down. Now this is a really hard choice because if I go into my decorative folder, I've got all these separate folders that are all full of beautiful designs, but I'm going to go into my florals, and I think I'm going to use 113. This is a really nice leaf design, and it works well because it's got that central stem, that running stitch down the centre, which I can line up around the edge of my shape. Now I think this is a little bit too big as it is, so I'm going to make it smaller. So I'm going to take the width down, I think, to about 7.5, and the length I'm going to take down to about 10. Just make it a little bit smaller, going around the edge. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up because I've got this central line that's going to follow the edge of my shape, I'm just going to keep the needle in the centre. So we can just lower our needle. So now I'm starting off in the right place. Bring my foot down. And I'm just going to guide it down and around, and we're going to, when we get to this area here, we're going to use our pattern end and stop and just navigate round the little V of the heart. But away we go. So I like the way one leaf is going into my heart and one leaf is going into the blue. I think that looks really sweet. So I'm just going to slow down because I'm coming to a point where I'm going to have to pivot. And I'm going to twist around. I'm just going to line up the next stitch, and then away we go. Now what I'm going to do, as I'm coming to this corner, I'm going to press my pattern end because I don't want too many leaves overlapping at that point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into my practical stitches. I'm going to go to a straight stitch. I'm going to make it slightly shorter, and I'm just going to stitch down that little V section. I'm going to twist, and I'm just going to do a couple of stitches, 2 stitches. Now I'm going to go back to my decoratives. So I'm going to go back in there, reselect that stitch again, which was 113. Now because this machine has a temporary memory, it's remembered the changes I've made, so I can just go straight back to that and it'll be exactly as it was before. I don't need to re-enter any of my settings, which is another lovely feature of a Bernina, the temporary memory. So now we can just start to sew again. And that just means I don't have too many leaves crossing over at in that tight point in the design. I'm just going to fit one last one. Oh, I think I can just get one more in. One more. Just going to pivot that round. Just going to move back a little bit just to get lined up. Just want to get one more little leaf in. That's it. Stop. And then I'm going to use my scissors. There we go, and we've gone all the way around our heart. I think it looks really pretty. We've pretty much finished the front. Now we're going to look at the back. Now I always think it's nice to do something special on the back as well. You don't want it just plain, that would be boring. So what I've decided to do for the back of this cushion is I'm going to do an envelope back on it, so it's going to overlap, but I just wanted to add a bit of interest and a bit of detail on the back. So what I've done is, this is one of the sections of the back. And as you can see, I've just joined 2 pieces together, so we've got 2 colours there. And I've folded over a 1-inch seam, and I just finished my edges off on the overlocker, so I used my L460 overlocker to finish the edges off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some fringing that's going to run all the way down the edge. And I'm going to do that with one of my favourite feet, which is foot 7, which is the Tailor-tack foot. Now, so this foot was designed for tailor tacks when you're marking out your patterns, but you can also use it to create fringing. It's a really nice effect. So I'm going to pop that on, and I just need to set it up. So I've got a zigzag stitch selected, and I want to make it 5mm wide, so it's pretty much as wide as it'll go. Now I want to create large loops, so I don't want much tension on my thread, so I'm going to go into tension and I'm going to take that right down to 1 and come out of that. And in terms of stitch length, again, I want that to be about 1 because I want my fringing to be nice and close together, so I'm going to take that to 1. So I think that's us all set up. Now what I need to do is I'm going to stitch onto my blue fabric, but then I'm going to go over the bar of the Tailor-tack foot, and that's what gives it the length, and I need to go into something, I need to sew into something. So I'm going to use some stabiliser, and I use the guide, the fin on the foot as the guide that I placed between the 2. So I'm just going to pop this down, and I'm going to lower my foot. I'm going to start fairly near the edge, because because I've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I need to be quite near to the top. And I'm going to start off with a knot so I'm secure, so I don't all unravel. So I'm just going to do a little knot. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention is I've also put orange thread in my bobbin, because you're going to be able to see the bobbin thread. So it's got orange, same orange top and bottom. And then we're just going to stitch over the guide and work our way down. It's quite a long piece, so it'll take me a little while to get to the bottom. So I just need to keep my stabiliser one side and my fabric the other side and just guide it down. Now when I get to the end, I'm going to use my scissors, so I'm going to secure. And then I'm going to raise the foot, just slide the tailor tacks off. Now, what will happen is when I pull my stabiliser, the fringe should come apart, but I need to secure it along this edge. So what I'm going to use to do that is I'm going to select a triple stitch, but I'm going to make it shorter because it needs to be quite short, because you need to make sure you catch all these little stitches. So I'm going to take that down to, I'm going to take that right down to 2. And I'm going to move my needle position right over. I'm just going to keep the same foot on because it's just easy. And I'm going to use the guide. So the guide in the Tailor-tack foot, I could use an edge stitch foot, but I'm just going to keep this on for ease. I'm just going to line the guide up with the edge and just stitch down, securing all those, the fringing in place. Just do a little knot. So I need to make sure I catch the top of all those stitches. Gently pulling them apart as I go. Great, and there we are at the end, and I'm just going to use my scissors to secure at the end. I've done my lovely fringing, so I've removed the stabiliser, and this is what you get left with. You get a lovely little fringing effect. I think that's really, really cute. So now what I'm going to do is to add another level of personalisation to the project. I'm going to write a little message that's going to run all the way along the back, and I'm going to use the text on my sewing machine to do that. I'm just going to put made with love, but you can put whatever you want, whatever message you want. You could put the child's name, or made with love from granny or mum, or whatever you want to do. But it's just another way to personalise a gift and make it extra special. Or you could even put Happy Christmas if you're making it as a Christmas gift. Okay, so we're going to program our lettering in. So on my 480, I need to go into combination mode. So I just press the plus. Then I go into my fonts. Now I'm going to choose the script font for this project. I really like this font, it looks really nice. And I'm going to expand my screen so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to put made with love. So I'm going to do capital M, then I'm going to go on to lowercase, M-A-D-E. Then I need a space, so I go into characters and find my space. Then back into my lowercase, and I can scroll up. So I'm going to enter made with, and then I need another space, and then go back to my lowercase, L-O-V-E. Then I want to finish it off with, I'm going to put a little heart there. So I'm going to go back into decorative, and actually, so I need to go back again because I need to go into satin and find that heart that I was using earlier. Where's it gone? There it is. Made with love. Now I can minimize my screen now, and I've got all my text entered there, and I want it to keep on repeating as I go down. So I'm not going to put pattern repeats in, I'm just going to let it go, let it flow through. So I think we're going to jump to the beginning, so we're all ready. And I've put foot 20 on so I can help line up, because I want it to line up just with the edge, not right on the edge, but just by the edge so it looks pretty. So I'm just going to get my fabric in a good position so it's the right way up. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the edge of the foot with the edge of the blue so it sits just above this line. I don't want it too close. And I've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I just need to be approximately 1/2 inch in so I don't chop off the start of my Made with Love. And then I'm just going to stitch my text all the way down just to add to that really nice little homemade element to it. Now what I am going to do, I'm just going to stop there because I've forgotten to put my stabiliser underneath, so I'm just going to lift that up so I can still add that now, just so it gives it, makes it a bit more rigid. That's it, and away we go. Now I've got near the end and I'm not going to have enough room to do a whole Made with Love again, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of combi mode, I'm going to go into my decorative patterns, and I'm going to select my heart, and I'm just going to do, I think I'll probably get 2 or 3 repeats of that in, we'll just see how we go. There we go, we can just finish there. So there we go, I think that's going to take the stabiliser off, and I think that's going to look really pretty. So what I'm going to do now is, now I've completed all the elements of the cushion, I'm going to join the front together and join the back together and make the cushion up, and then we'll see how it all turned out. Great, so I've sewn all my front section together, and I've sewn the back section together, and I've created the envelope pillow, and it's all done. I'm really, really pleased with it. I think my daughter Ruby's going to love it. It's going to look great in her room. And I've really enjoyed using all the different applique techniques and using the circular sewing attachment. I think they give you great results. They're really good accessories just to add to your machine. So we are all done, and that's the end of the webinar for today. Thank you for watching.